Next up, going kind of back to Warner Brothers. HBO's pulling a bunch of stuff from HBO Max.
Yeah.
Yeah. Michael,
That's
thoughts?
My thoughts are that I can't. Again, we made that reference about people coming in and trying to make their mark, right?
Yeah.
Oftentimes, when people come in to try to make their mark, they fail to do one of two things,
Mm-hmm.
or they fail to do both of these things. They fail to recognize things that are working and maintain those things, or they fail to recognize this is a system that could use some improvement, and let's improve this system instead of tearing it down whole cloth.
Mm-hmm.
This to me feels very much like a failure of point one and point two. Now, I am not someone who's going to say that HBO Max was certainly a perfect platform.
No.
By any means. But HBO Max as a platform did have a lot of interesting things going for it. And I think, as we saw coming through the pandemic, again, when you saw Warner Brothers taking movies to HBO Max like for first release because the theaters were not a viable option.
Yep.
Like HBO Max was able to, as a platform, get a number of these studios some of the revenue that they would have completely lost by not releasing this stuff to theaters.
At least eyeballs. Mm-hmm.
That being said, I think they have completely misunderstood their market with HBO Max, their audience for HBO Max. And
Ooh, how so?
because I think what you're talking about is like, so I mean, again, when you look at the gamut of channels, right? You've got Discovery Plus, you've got HBO Max, you've got, there are a number of services that are tied under Warner Brothers that have their own streaming services. Right?
Yeah.
And when they're talking about this, like making this Discovery, HBO, Cinemax, like mashup that they're talking about,
Which is
Part
rumored to just be called Max.
Max, right? Part of, I think, what drew people to HBO Max was all of this premium programming.
Mm-hmm.
that HBO has been well known for
Prestige
decades.
programming.
I mean, it's been decades.
Yeah.
HBO has been known for prestige programming since I was a kid in the 80s.
Soprano. And
Like-
yeah, because they had top tier movies that they licensed to get onto their platform. They had Prestige
And
television.
They were doing documentaries. They were doing short series. They were doing all that stuff in the
comedy.
early
They used to
80s.
do a lot of real
their stand-up
comedy
comedy
specials
was
were
amazing.
huge for them.
So again, I feel so going back to that, I feel that like when I signed up for HBO Max as an end user, and I'll go again, this is my experience, I can talk to that most easily. When I signed up for HBO Max, I was like, I've been an HBO subscriber in the past as a young man.
Mhm.
Like I know what they have to offer as HBO, and now I want some of the other things they have to offer as well. Like I liked the fact that they had some of the Cinemax content and some of the, they were taking from other Warner Brothers properties, right? They had some of the Adult Swim content. They had some. They had that whole DC specific channel. I was like, that's awesome. There are shows I'd love to watch that are part of that. So there was this section of programming I was very much there for, and a lot of it was their original series and their original content.
Which is what's interesting to me because it seems to be mostly original content. Now, supposedly Westworld. Yeah, well, Westworld and the Nevers, apparently they're going to license them to third parties. So Netflix et al. Tubi, whoever the hell they send it to.
But I mean, to go back to the reason that they're doing this, right? The reason that is being supposed and has been hinted at
I
is
don't
that
understand
it's due to the cost of residuals. At least they're saying that they get a tax break and they will save money by not for example, like let's say you're on an episode of Westworld and part of your contract is you get a residual, right? If Westworld doesn't air, you don't get money and they don't have to pay you.
Oh, but if they license it to somebody else, then they can bundle in the cost of those residuals into the third-party licensing deal.
That's correct.
Oh wow.
So, again, this part
I hadn't even thought of that.
That was one of the things I read the other day when some of the shows leaving HBO Max started to resurge again earlier this week. I think it was It might have been on Monday. But I read there was some supposition about the fact that it was residuals, and I started reading a little bit more about that. I was like, that makes complete sense. That they are looking to cut costs and to reduce their overhead by cutting out residuals. And if you think about it from a SAG perspective, like who's the people that this is really going to hurt most are those kind of like
day actor types,
those day actors, day players that that are counting on residuals to make up a part of their income for being small parts on these huge shows that have longevity. Right?
Yeah. God, I didn't even think about that. That's a really... this is why I have you on the show, because you've got good perspective. I didn't even think about that.
Oh, well, thank you. I thought it was just my chiseled good looks.
That too.
I mean, I'm happy. I'm happy for the opinions part.
Yeah. Wow.
It's nice that someone finally likes me for my brain, Alex. Thank you.
I really hadn't even thought about that, but that makes a lot of sense. If they're transferring the residuals cost into these third parties, that would make a lot of sense. And especially where Zaslav's trying to cut back costs where he can, because they spent a lot of money. I mean, they spent a lot of money on Warner Brothers.
Again, you're gonna see as the shows start to trickle down even more, you're gonna see that it's gonna be a number of those high profile, high cost.
Westworld kind of fell apart.
It fell apart, but I mean, from a cost perspective and from a production perspective, I mean,
it's expensive.
That show cost them a lot of money.
Yeah. So, it makes you wonder what else. And obviously, everybody's basically saying, Variety's saying, nothing is safe in the acts of Zaslav.
No, really, that's
nothing is safe.
That's kind of the impression that they're giving right now. And Westworld was one of those shows that was an HBO, one of their babies, one of their precious shows for a short time. But it remains to be seen what other things are going to get cut out of the service. And like, for example, as a viewer myself, I'll go back to that, like, I don't know, like I watch a certain number of things on Discovery, but I don't really need a bunch of Discovery
content,
reality shows, and content that's not what I want HBO for, or HBO Max for. I wanted HBO Max for quality, like cinematic content and storytelling, and not like 90 Day Fiance.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely.
That's not. I'm sure there is a Venn diagram where those groups meet in the middle. Yeah. But, like, I am not part of that Venn diagram. So like for me, I was thinking about it just the other day. I'm like, I could cut HBO Max out of my monthly budget, and I don't think I'd be hurting right now.
Well, so for what it's worth, apparently Variety says that they're pulling program to push to third-party free ad-supported television channels, so it's FAST. But apparently they're going to announce their own. So I know that, who is it? Like, Tubi is owned by... Who's that one? Tubi is owned by Fox. So, like, Fox owns Tubi, right? And Tubi is a free, cost no money, but it's all ad supported and you can just stream that stuff. And they put a lot of their stuff on there. There's a few of those free ad supported streaming services out there.
Oh, like, yeah, Amazon's got Freeform, and Amazon's got another one also. Oh no, wait, no. It's not Freeform. Amazon has
I'm trying to think.
Oh, what was it? Thank you.
So who are the big ones right now? Paramount's Pluto TV, Comcast has Xumo, Fox has Tubi, ITV has got one, ITVX. Amazon owns Freevee. Roku's got one, Samsung's got one. Yeah. Crackle's the one I was thinking of. That one's owned by used to be owned by Sony.
I thought it used to be Sony. Yeah.
Now apparently it's owned by Chicken Soup for the Soul Entertainment and Plex.
Just to speak to chat real quick, chat mentions basically you want the premium steak and the slob food, what you pay for in the service. I am, if they want to include whatever food in this buffet they're building is fine, but like I'll just maybe even using that example. I feel like I was wanting to go to Ruth's Chris, and I went to Ruth's Chris. I paid for Ruth's Chris. I'm sitting down at Ruth's Chris, and around me they're building an old country buffet.
give them a little credit, like more like the Outback, but yeah.
But I when you talk about like the quality, right? Because I feel like that's what you lose when you start cutting all that stuff out. Is they had this premium service that people were willing to pay for.
Here's the thing, but these are shows that are pretty much done, right?
Yeah, I
guess I almost think it comes back to that residuals thing, because
that's the thing.
Disney has shown
part of what I paid for HBO was I wanted that access to.
You want access
the content, that content that they have created for years.
Yeah, like, and it's how you're making that value judgment. Absolutely.
That's for me, and again, that's personal.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, everybody's got to, and everybody has to make that judgment. To be honest, I don't pay for HBO Max. I get it for free. My in-laws live out in the sticks, and they don't stream things, but they, through their DirecTV, have HBO, and so I can use his DirecTV login to access HBO Max. So we do,
of course,
which is fine. And thank God HBO hasn't started cracking down on that yet. I like HBO Max for the Prestige program. I, like you, am like, this is my stake, right? Like right now, the 3rd season of His Dark Materials just dropped on HBO Max. And I love that series, right? It's headlined by Daphne Keane, who many of you will remember as X-23 from Logan. And we'll talk about this in a few minutes, will be starring in the new Star Wars show, Acolyte. And God, I want to see her as a dark side Sith. Like, after her turn in X-23 and her job here,
she's a very good young actress.
She is. I'm super excited. By the way, if you haven't watched His Dark Materials on HBO, I give it a hearty recommendation. And this is actually where I think Westworld and other stuff kind of, and actually even Game of Thrones to a degree, kind of go off the rails. Like when they started doing His Dark Materials, they could really do it as a prestige show because it's 3 seasons, and they know it's 3 seasons, and it's done. You know what I mean? And they know. All right, look, it's gonna be this, and this, and then it's over, and we're not gonna worry about it anymore. And whereas Westworld, God, that thing could have gone on forever. Game of Thrones could have gone on forever, and obviously that was a whole mess. It sounds like House of the Dragon. They've got I think it's a 4-season plan. Is the theory. Yeah. So hopefully that won't go off the rails. But I think that's the better way to do prestige television, because even the way The Sopranos ended, everybody was pissed off.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, right? It doesn't matter how many ways you try and slice it. When a popular show that people are passionate about ends, you're going to get a 50-50. It's one of those shows never end with like the majority of the people that enjoyed that show being, you know what, that was the perfect
chat. Let me know. Tell me if you all can think of any shows that ended that were reasonably long running series that when it ended, everybody went, okay, that was fine. The only one I can think of where I don't remember hearing anybody complain how it ended, that was a long running show, wasn't like an HBO show, was Friends. When Friends ended, everybody's kind of like, all right, yeah, fine. That was good. That was fine. Like when How I Met Your Mother ended, everybody lost their minds.
I think when the U.S. office, I think when that ended, people were like, they were ready for it. Like I know like my wife and I were ready for that show to end. Okay. We weren't like this.
But do you think it ended well?
Ending. I thought it ended well for that show. Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
Fair enough.
But again, again, that comes to a spot where the user base may be divided. I can't remember reading a bunch of people complaining about how The Office ended. That doesn't mean they didn't. It just means I didn't hear about it.
Yep.
You know?
So there you go. Nothing is safe from the acts of Zaslav. Give the guy this. He's gutsy. He doesn't like tiptoe around. He's just like, nope, done.
Now, what'll be funny is if when Diablo 4 comes out, we see an item that's called Zaslav's Axe.
That would be funny. That would be
completely separate, 2 different. I'm tying those 2 stories together, folks. Tying them together.
There you go.